Hi gang, Rob here. It is the evening of 15 July 2016, and look at this box, would ya? I don't think you need to wonder where this product comes from. This corrugated cardboard knife housing vessel is from Spartan Blades, proudly made in the United States of America. Featuring Crucible Industries CPM S35 VN steel. And we got a little sort of mission statement kind of stuff going on here. Knives with intent they produce, and they are located in Southern Pines, North Carolina. Yeah, and inside the box, I would imagine, is a Spartan Harsey folding knife in stonewashed finish. Oh! Let's open it up and see. I do know what's in here, and that's exactly what it is. It comes in a nice sandwich of closed cell foam, and it looks like you got a little Spartan Blades swag. Comes with it. Let's get that out of the way. Knife comes in a poly bag. And here we go, guys. I have to tell you, Spartan Blades is sort of a newer company that I've been pulling for. You know me. When a new American company hits the knife market, I watch closely, and I always want them to succeed. Because let's face it, most knives like this in the under $500 price range of the market seem to be flooding in from communist China in this day and age, most of the new offerings. So it's good to see an American company producing high quality modern folding knives. And it is the Spartan Harsey folder, signed by William Harsey. This knife is one, guys, not only have I been pulling for Spartan Blades, I've been anticipating this knife for a while. Evidently, some of the folks who had votes at Blade Show this year also were pulling for this knife, because it won American Made Knife of the Year for the 2016 Blade Show, the annual pilgrimage of Blade magazine. I said that I thought people were pulling for it because it won. Yes, you do sense a hidden meaning there. We'll get to that as we go. But what is it? Well, it is the 21st century titanium frame lock version of a really famous folding knife. Kind of a rare folding knife, an icon in the annals of the folding modern tactical knife. And I'm talking about, you guys know it, the Lone Wolf Harsey. They made a T2 and a T3. One was the T2 was like a 3 1/4 inch blade, and the T3 was like a 4-inch blade, I think. They were liner locks with a blade shape very similar to this, but they were steel lined, G10 handled liner locks, produced by Lone Wolf Knives, and they're kind of a legendary knife, and they were super cool, and they were super comfortable, and they cut really well, and they were gorgeous. The handle ergonomics were just great, as are the ergos of this knife. But I don't know, what was it, guys? 2012-ish. Benchmade Knife Company, Darth Vader of the Western United States. They sometimes seem like they have a goal of world domination. So they bought Lone Wolf. They produced some Lone Wolf designs under Benchmade ownership for about a year. And then what did they do? They killed Lone Wolf. Some some semblance of those knives live on in the Benchmade Hunt series, but not really. So, yes, they bought Lone Wolf Knives, a competitor, and frankly, not a threat, just a competitor. They were a small company. They bought them just to close them, and they did. So died the Harsey T2 and T3. But not scarcely 3 or 4 years later, the Harsey folder is back. An American company is building it. It is the Spartan Harsey folder. Although it's sort of envelope shape, is all Harsey. It's really, from a construction and action and locking system standpoint, it's less like a Harsey and more like, what does your eye tell you, guys? I've got this spring titanium clip, repositionable tip up left or right, no tip down, but with a filler tab for the location you're not using. Some large looking hardware. Nice stone wash everywhere. What does it remind you of? By the way, it's a 4-inch blade, 5-inch handle, half an inch thick, 5/32 stock. Doesn't it sort of remind you of a big Hinderer? Saber ground blade, pretty large run of flat all the way out to about here. Thickly ground. It's thick because that shiny edge is 17 degrees per side, and it's kind of broad. Not the thin slicer that the Lone Wolf Harseys were. What does it remind you of? I think it does. It reminds me of an XM18, a half an inch longer, maybe even an XM24. Oh, by the way, 5.9 ounces. Did you hear how I used all English units of measure, and I didn't even use decimals to make it easy on you guys who use the metric system? I used fractions. Wow. Good luck figuring that out, guys. Okay, so here it is. Let's talk about the blade. Let's just start talking here. Let's talk about the knife. We got a stone-washed slab of S35 VN steel. A gorgeous drop point. Man. Every time I've ever looked at a Harsey blade profile, I've always thought cigarette boat. You see it? Yeah, you do. It does, doesn't it? It just looks like a deadly fast penetrator. Oh, and it is. And it also happens to be a pretty good slicer, at least in the Lone Wolf trim. I'm not sure what kind of a slicer it's going to be with, I don't know, about a 45 thousandths thickness dimension behind the edge. It can still cut. Don't get me wrong, it can still cut. I don't think I've done a test on this initial sharpness. I was kind of in a hurry when I sharpened it. Don't think I cut any paper with it, but I knew I'd be digging it back out tonight. Oh, it's not too shabby. Pretty good, actually. Yeah, that'll work. But it's just a great all-purpose knife blade. Just great. Oh, man. Let's take a look at how they executed the back of the edge with no choil at all. Very reminiscent, I think, of some of the Rexford knives from ZT, the 801 and 804, how that edge just kind of starts out of nothing and tapers down to nothing. They did a great job with this style of the base of an edge. There must have been, well, you can barely detect it, just the slightest amount of beard to give them something to grind away and still end up with a pretty straight line between the ricasso and the sharpened edge. Now that will start to recurve over time, but I kept it pretty true in the initial sharpening. I don't hate that. but rest assured it will look worse if it gets used over the years and resharpened. It's not too hard on the stones, not too easy, not too difficult to keep from having any no cleanup or recurve in this area. So it's okay. The handle is it's just right, man. It's the right thickness. It's the right height. It sort of has finger grooves, and they're not annoying. A lot of finger grooves are. These are just right where you want them. The saber grip is magnificent. It's really good. You're in control. The jimping is plenty purposeful, but not so aggressive that it hurts. It's very good. The hammer grip, equally great. Draw cut grip, even though those finger grooves are, they're kind of digging into my palm, they're not doing so in any way that's offensive. The overhand pinch grip, I guess my hand doesn't quite know where to be in this grip. I can come back to the finger groove, and I can come forward, use my middle finger there for a little forward grip. Still got plenty of handle to pinch onto. Not bad. Oh, reverse tactical grip is just beautiful. I don't like it when a thumb has to wrap and a pointy part of the handle hits me here. And I don't like knives that I have to grip like this, because I feel like I can't extend the blade in any meaningful way. When I get to come up like this, I can. Just a subtle thing, but it's a thing. Let's keep walking back. Got a stone-washed titanium frame, and it's all titanium, both sides. Nothing fancy going on here. The stone wash doesn't match the blade, but it complements the blade well. We have a shouldered, through-drilled, open stop pin, kind of interesting. It is a floating but shouldered pin, so it doesn't control the width dimension at all. We're on some what appear to be proprietary stepped standoffs. I wouldn't call them hourglass standoffs. They're sort of have 3 section thicknesses. Scales are nicely chamfered, no hot spots on the knife. Screws are definitely not off the shelf or out of a knife supply catalog. They're sort of a radial satin. And then we got the pocket clip. Oh. Hey Spartan, Schaefer pens called, or Parker pens, whichever one it is, they want their clip back. On a knife that costs several $100s, I should not look at the pocket clip and think, don't they have pens with that clip at Walgreens, 10 for $6? That's any graphic design guy who the graphic design guy who did this, fire him. If you're the owner of the company and you're the graphic designer who did this, fire yourself. Hire a real graphic designer. Good gracious. Who am I to talk, right? I love the Benchmade split arrow clip. I like that clip. I like it black Parkerized, but I like it. I know what you guys think it looks like. I disagree. Anyway, that's a subjective thing. I just think it's silly looking. Part of their logo, though, arrows. See, Spartan helmet, Spartan arrows. Yeah. But I digress. How does the clip work? Well, does it remind you? Forget there's an arrow cut out of it, and forget that it's missing a little kink in the middle. It's sort of like a Sebenza clip. It's sort of like a Hinderer clip. It works really well. It works really well. Easy enough to get in the pocket with one hand. Perfect retention. Not too hard to get out. It's not going to rip your pants pockets up. It just works. Would the knife be better with a milled billet titanium cool Mall Ninja pocket clip? Wouldn't it be cooler if it had? No, it wouldn't. It might be cooler, but it wouldn't work as well. I just get rid of that stupid thing. Anyway, the knife runs on a revolutionary technology in 2016. The suspension system of the blade provides butter smoothness, free action, superb lateral stability, excellent speed of deployment, long wear, semi-self lubrication. What? And it's not ball bearings? Is the 15 minutes of fame over already for ball bearings? Well, it is if you like phosphor bronze washers. Why do anything else? I'm just saying, guys. Anyhow, I'm being a little bit facetious, I know. Let's look at this lockup, shall we? There's a little thingy in there right below the clip, see it? Uh-huh. I really think we need to take the knife apart here. This will be like an hour and a half video. No, it won't. I want you to look at a picture. In fact, we're going to look at several of them. Look for these features in the picture. Internal over travel stop. It looks just like a Hinderer blade stabilizer, lock stabilizer, except it's mounted on the inside. So it doesn't detract from the clean design of the lock side of the knife. You'll get a good shot of that shouldered floating stop pin. And then you want to look at the washers. You'll notice, I think you can actually see this through the knife if you look closely. The lock side washer is small. The offside washer is large. However, not quite large enough. The Sebenza, I think, is the only knife that gets this perfectly right. If you think about the point where the detent ball is going to contact the tang of the blade, actually, this might. If the detent ball, I think it is actually. Talk amongst yourselves. Now, the detent ball is actually a little outside the circumference of the washer. On a Sebenza, the pressure from the detent ball, if you drew a line straight through, would be pressing on the washer, not cantilevering over the washer. That's why Sebenzas can be so stable and so smooth with really heavy lock bar pressure. And they're not, the knife blade isn't kicking over the washer when the detent ball presses on it. It's brilliant. Some other knife makers should try it. They got pretty close with this one. So take a look at those things. The washers, the shoulder floating stop pin, the internal over travel spot. Also, take a look at the pivot, which you'll see in pieces. We'll talk about that when we come back. So what did you see? Now, I like this because it's an homage to the Harseys of years past, this large pivot flange. It really kind of does nothing though. If you notice, the female pivot, usually that's bigger than the male side, but in this case the male side is. There's nothing restraining this radially. It's not press fit, it falls right out. It's not knurled to hold it into the titanium. I really wonder, after this knife gets used for a while, whether we're going to have the same issues that the zero tolerance knives like the 801 and some others had with that pivot, that it would spin in the handle and come loose no matter how much Loctite you used. I don't love this pivot design, although it is a relatively large pivot. And let's kind of segue now into some execution and construction issues, okay? That's the first one. Another one, if you looked closely into that pivot, or at the male threads of the male side of the pivot, did you notice how coarse they were? Now, coarse threads are fine on threaded fasteners that are going to get sucked down tight and torqued. Sometimes coarse threads actually hold better than fine threads in that respect. They're kind of digging into each other with that torque. But this is an item, a pivot, that is screw adjustable. Coarse threads are a horrible idea. Look at a Benchmade Triage or the new -1 Griptilians. They have a super fine thread. They're designed to be able to make sort of gross radial moves with your Torx bit without affecting this dimension a lot. Fine threads make more sense in an adjustable pivot. So we have an unrestrained pivot with coarse threads. I think that's going to end up being a bad combination. I'm guessing. I don't have any data. I'm just looking from an engineering standpoint. That's not good. Okay. Now I'm going to show you another picture, and we're going to look at the broke down view of the knife and look at the standoffs. Okay, just before I show you, we have a screw and a screw. Obviously the standoff must be threaded. I don't see any locating female pin or cup. So we have a screw going into a threaded standoff from either side. Obviously we want these 3 points of contact to serve a locating function. Make sure the slabs are oriented to each other right, correct? Because all we've got is a pivot and a very close but floating stop pin. So from here back, the knife is on its own, except for these 3 pins. Shouldered, they must be shouldered standoffs, right? You can't have a knife with a 5-inch handle with no locating function for the back 80% of the knife blade. Well, here, take a look, or the knife handle, take a look. Uh-oh. Those were just flat ends on those standoffs. Not good engineering practice, boys. Not good machinist protocol. Should have known better. You know, sometimes producing good machined tools requires more knowledge than computer programming and the ability to stand in a window and watch a carousel of tools work. You kind of have to know what hardware needs to do before you can design hardware. This is not good. Okay. Next thing that's just a little baffling. You did not hear me talk about a steel insert. So we got a good old-fashioned titanium on steel lock interface, right? Let's see how they handled that. I'm going to show you 2 pictures. The first one will be a picture of the lock face of the lock bar. The second picture will be a picture of the blade tang that interfaces with the lock face of the lock bar. I was a little puzzled. Let's see if you are too. Yeah, your eyes are not deceiving you. We have a carbidized lock face on the titanium lock bar, engaging a carbidized blade tang? What? Why would you carbidize hardened stainless steel that's like 60 Rockwell? Well, we don't have to think too hard to figure that out. That's not a decision you would make in an engineering phase. That's a decision that you would make after you had produced a bunch of knives and they ended up even with a carbidized lock face with a bunch of lock stick. What you can't see from those pictures is that when I had this knife down for its spa treatment, I wasn't taking any chances. Both of those surfaces also have Sharpie on them. It seems to be breaking in through its lock stick. It's just very curious. So I got to believe that they had bad geometry or micro finishes that didn't like each other, and we had a bunch of lock stick. Now, having said all that, no blade play in any direction. The lock bar has adequate but not ridiculous amount of pressure. Just nice. Now, before I get deeper into this, and we are going to go just a little deeper, those of you who don't own one of these, you want to stay with me. Those of you who bought one and you're really trying to love this knife and you really don't want to hear the rest of the criticism, you might just want to turn off the camera. And I'll leave you with this thought. The Spartan Harsey folder is a superb interpretation of the Bill Harsey knife. And in its current form, titanium frame lock S35VN blade, it is a really, really solid offering in the $200 to $250 price range. Okay, see you Spartan Harsey owners on the next video. Okay, for the rest of you who stayed with me, what we didn't want those guys to hear, or have their buddies here while they're watching the video together, is this really solid knife in the $200 to $250 price class costs $460. Yeah, it's more than a Hinder XM18. It's more than a base model Sebenza, and it's got it's not strongly constructed. You know, witness what we were just talking about. Is it me, or does the proprietary hardware just look a little rough, unfinished? I mean, look, you know, just look closely. Do those look like they're made as well as Sebenza screws? Look at the filler tab closely. Notice how undersized it is, and because of the location of the hole, it's sort of kicked over to this side, so it looks like a big gap here. You know, it's, look at the chatter marks where the, oh man, where the thumb relief is for the thumb studs. Yuck. Evidently the stonewash didn't, I guess that's too much chatter to stonewash out. You know, everything just looks not quite on this knife. You know, it's a knife that would, by dimensions and by overall envelope visual examination, it would look like a hard use folder. But it's not put together like a Hinderer. It's not put together like a Strider. Frankly, it's not put together as well as many ZTs that compete in that 180 to 250 price range. So, would we spend $460 on this knife based on street cred, by reputation of the manufacturer? I don't think so. I know they have several other models, but the only one I've reviewed was the Spartan Acrobus, which maybe was their first effort. And that was a knife that just to me looked like it didn't know what it wanted to be. The blade shape was a little odd. They tried to execute a Chris Reeve bushing style pivot on that knife, and it didn't come out right. The only company I've ever seen be able to do that remotely as well as Chris Reeve, you know, a pivot that you can crank down tight and have the blade be free, smooth, with no blade play. The only other company I've seen be able to do that is Grayman knives. Spartan failed. Gosh, the other one escapes me. The Mini Samaritan. You guys put in the comments who that knife maker is. That they didn't quite get it right. Spyderco hasn't gotten it right on the Paramilitary 2. Those knives have a lot of variability in the pivot. So this knife basically is Spartan admitting they can't do that. It's just a regular adjustable pivot. I don't see $460 here. A few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, I reviewed the Olamic Wayfarer 24/7, the production model of the Olamic Wayfarer, and I said this should have been the domestic knife of the year, and I'll show you the one who won in a few weeks, and it shouldn't have won. Well, this is the knife I was talking about. Compared to the Wayfarer, also made in the U.S., there may be some overseas machining on that knife. Rumor has it. Still, United States company, a United States made knife. It costs $85 less than this knife, and it is far better executed. The price is going to have to come down on these. There's no way I pay more for this knife than I pay for a Hary. There's no way I pay more for this knife than a base model Sebenza. This needs to be down in the low to mid 300s if it's going to succeed. I got a feeling over in the next few months, we're going to see the secondary market kind of flooded with these knives, and they aren't going to be selling for $400, let alone $450 or $460. I wouldn't mind having one because they do give me this left-hand carry option, but I'll wait till somebody needs the money. I don't think it's a bad knife. I think it could be built better, but as it is, it would be a really nice knife to have in that $200 to $250 range. Maybe I'll pay $300 for one. I don't know, but it is it's 30% overpriced. It just is. No way to justify it. Unless, it's worth $100 to have the blade of the year. How'd that work out for the CRKT hijinks, by the way? I just sold one for, what, $240? Weren't they $499? Yeah, I thought so. This may see the same fate, even with a famous autograph on the blade. That's all for this one, my friends. Grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. And remember, the Word and Scott's Harsey are sharp.